Last season, reliability was at an all-time high, with F1 teams routinely extending engine life to unprecedented levels. Having said that, 2024 might be a far more challenging year for engine makers across the board, as the engine rules are changing again, and this could create disastrous results for some teams. The absence of reliability worries contributed to the recent F1 campaign being largely predictable. Unlike in prior years, there were no mechanical problems in any of the races. This meant that, other from reducing the presence of safety cars, DNFs were rarely a limiting factor for success. However, with a record number of races on the calendar in 2024, the scenario might alter. In combination with this all-time level of on-track action, engine allocations will be reduced, meaning that the teams will have less engine to use for more races. A perfect recipe for engine allocation, penalties throughout the season, or a bunch of DNFs. The FIA amended the regulations for 2023 in April of last year. The maximum number of permissible engine components has been increased from 3 to 4, providing teams with more leeway. As a result, engine penalties were rare in the 2023 season. Due to the crowded schedule at the time, this revision was judged appropriate across the board. This, however, will not be the case in 2024. Engine allotment has been reduced to the previous level, with only 3 power units permitted over the 24-race schedule. 6 sprint racing weekends are included. This will have a varying influence on different teams throughout the field, with F1's political aspect playing a role in this decision. According to reports, Mercedes and Honda would be delighted with this adjustment, as they are well aware of their engine's high dependability. Ferrari and Renault, its competitors, are less pleased about this new restriction. This not only penalizes teams for unforced errors, but it also forces modifications in seasonal calculations. Ferrari, for example, may be motivated to finish the season in order to escape penalties. While this strategy appears to be rational, it is also much riskier. Power units would have to be stretched thinner throughout the season. Furthermore, it is assumed that reliability breakdowns would not disrupt a highly aggressive strategy. Teams might instead take a more realistic approach. This would entail incurring a strategic grid penalty later in the season. One weekend would be lost for a more manageable approach throughout the 24 rounds, in theory. Of course, only time will tell how teams adapt to these changes. In any case, it appears that reliability will become a more important part of Formula One in the 2024 season. Next to the changes for the 2024 seasons, the FIA is still working on the rule set for 2026, and head of sport Nicolas Tombazis is optimistic that the minimum weight will be greatly reduced with the smaller cars. The new hybrid period will not begin until 2026, yet it has already sparked more debate than any previous regulation change. Critics are afraid that Formula One may stray too far from its roots. Saving energy would be more crucial than accelerating in races, because each lap requires the recovery of 350 kilowatts of energy. This is precisely what the FIA and Formula One are attempting to avoid with the 2026 regulations. The trump card should be efficiency. Weight loss is an important factor in this. Nobody could have predicted that this would be achievable with substantially heavier driving units. The majority of the savings will be realized by making the cars smaller. They will be 10 centimeters slimmer and 20 centimeters shorter. This finally reverses the recent trend of increasingly bigger autos. Initially, a savings goal of 20 kilograms was mentioned, then 30 kilograms. But, according to FIA head of sport Nicolas Tombazis, much more is possible. The target is 40 to 50 kilograms less. The current weight restriction is 798 kilograms. However, the FIA does not want to do away with the minimum weight entirely. That would set off an endless competition with unforeseeable consequences, Tombazis said. However, the Greek also warns the teams. There will be no more concessions if the tyres or any control unit become heavier than expected. The minimum weight will remain at the value we set. Tombazis is certain. In 2026, some cars will still be overweight. Overall, the first man in the FIA executive is satisfied with the rule-finding process. We are on the right track with the 2026 car. The driving characteristics will be pretty similar to what we have today. The cars will generally behave much better in traffic. That should make overtaking easier. We are also still working on the DRS system. Active aerodynamics will be used less for overtaking and more to reduce drag so that maximum energy can be recovered on the straights. It is unknown how many pieces will be positioned flat towards the wind. The front and rear wings are deemed safe. The beam wing and diffuser edge may also be adjusted. Apart from all the aero regulation changes, we will also see major changes in the engine department. And 6 engine manufacturers have registered for the start of Formula One's next power unit regulation cycle, which will begin in 2026 and last until the conclusion of the 2030 season. That's an increase of 2 over the existing list, with Audi and a Ford-backed Red Bull powertrains project joining Ferrari, Mercedes, Honda, and Alpine, Renault. A lineup that hasn't altered since the 2015 F1 season. The Andretti Cadillac project, which has FIA clearance to enter the grid but now has to negotiate financial arrangements with F1, has a promise from the GM brand that owns Cadillac to deliver an engine starting in 2028. But for the time being, this is the list of the 10 existing teams and the supplier with which each is paired for 2026. Red Bull Powertrains. Honda's decision to exit F1 at the conclusion of the 2021 season put Red Bull in an unpleasant situation, which it has mostly reversed afterwards, with a supply arrangement covering the 2022-25 seasons negotiated to allow Red Bull figure out a longer-term replacement. As a result, Red Bull established its own engine business, Red Bull Powertrains, with its own power unit slated to debut in 2026. It has since enlisted Ford as a collaborator on that project. Mercedes' works team is formally divided into 2 bases, the chassis plant in Brackley and Mercedes-AMG high-performance powertrains in Brixworth. The Mercedes name has been officially badged on F1 engines since the 1994 season with Sauber, though it was involved the previous season when the Concept by Mercedes-Benz slogan appeared on the 1993 Saubers, as it had worked with the team and the British manufacturer Ilmor on that year's programme. Ferrari, perhaps F1's only real works team, operates from its Maranello headquarters, which also houses its road car business and World Endurance Championship hypercar project. McLaren's second-engine partnership with Mercedes may be very different from the one that helped the team win 3 drivers' titles and 1 constructors' championship during its years as an F1 powerhouse in the late 1990s and early 2000s. But a reunion for 2021 has coincided with the team's most competitive seasons during the turbo hybrid era. It announced a contract extension at the end of the 2023 season, which means McLaren will use Mercedes engines until at least the end of 2030. Aston Martin, Honda. Despite stating its intention to leave F1 after the 2021 season, Honda has never truly left the sport. Since then, Red Bull has used its engines under the Red Bull Powertrains label, with Honda effectively acting as a supplying contractor, while Honda's name has returned to the Make of the Engine moniker for Red Bull and AlphaTauri for 2023. It also registered as a manufacturer with the FIA for the next F1 engine rules, and in May of last year, Aston Martin, now supplied by Mercedes, was given exclusive use of its 2026 engine. That works agreement is what Aston Martin Performance Technologies CEO Martin Whitmarsh believes to be one of the final pieces of the jigsaw puzzle for the company's long-term F1 strategy. Alpine, Renault. There will be no surprises here. Renault's works F1 team will employ the engine currently assigned to Alpine Racing on the list of registered power unit suppliers for 2026. Team Enston had a brief stint without Renault power, switching to Mercedes in the 2015 season before Renault purchased the troubled squad back, but that was the only outlier since Benetton partnered with Renault in 1995. Williams, Mercedes. On January 8th, Williams confirmed that it will prolong its association with Mercedes until the 2026 regulations cycle. That is Williams' longest-lasting relationship with an engine manufacturer, and it began in 2014, at the dawn of the turbo hybrid era, with Williams finishing 3rd in the Constructors' Championship in back-to-back seasons. Red Bull's second team, formerly known as AlphaTauri, Red Bull Powertrains. From 2026, Red Bull's yet-to-be-renamed sibling team will be powered by the identical Red Bull Powertrains developed package as the main team. Audi will make its F1 debut in 2026 and is now preparing for that project, which includes a majority acquisition of the Sauber team, which will be known as the Stake F1 team for the following 2 seasons. It has set an ambitious goal of competing for victories in the championship in its first 3 years with its own power unit, which is being constructed at its Nürburgring factory in Germany. Haas, to be announced. The only team yet to declare a supply arrangement until the start of the next regulations cycle in 2026 is Haas, which has a strong technical connection with Ferrari and has utilized its engines solely since joining F1 in 2016. The big question will be if any of the newcomers will be able to challenge the long-standing engine manufacturers. If not, it will be exciting to see if any of the customer teams will be able to jump in the gap left by the teams that have switched to their own power plants. What do you think? Will we see major changes along the grid when the new regulations start? And what about next year? Will the lower allocation come back to bite some of the teams who are experiencing worse reliability? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.